can help them any way we can.
Okay. I'll just repeat that for the benefit of the audience. Breaking news directly from the government of Ogun State. Transaction costs for real estate at the lowest in Nigeria, 3%.
I would like to clarify, it's for projects which are in conjunction with Ministry of Housing.
It's government projects only. Okay. If you have questions, please write them down and hand them to the ushers. The questions will be beamed on the screens and answered at the end of the panel. And if you'd like to direct them to specific panelists, please say so when you write down your questions. Coming to you, Jide, where transaction costs will not be 3% because you're private. What kind of role will OPIC be playing in the urban development story in Ogun State? And I asked that in the context of Agbara Industrial Estate, which we were told early in the morning is the largest industrial estate in the whole continent of Africa. And you were saying to me earlier that less than 25% of it has been developed. What's the plan for Agbara? And how do we ensure that, by the way, most people believe that Agbara is in Lagos State. So what are we doing to ensure that we are out there with the right visibility, with the right strategy to bring that project to life? And final thing, it's an omnibus question. Bearing in mind that in urban development, transport infrastructure is really one of the most critical issues. What's your transport strategy?
Thanks, Femi. The first place to start is to recognize that OPIC is a 30-year-old corporation. It was created by the founding fathers of Ogun State because they recognize the unique advantage Ogun has, both by virtue of being the gateway state and the resources that we control. Now, what previous administration tried to do was use OPIC as a vehicle to open up new, what you could call border cities. And typically what was done was just to basically put in the roads and then attract investors to come in there and put in their resources. But this administration recognized that is a limited view and it doesn't give you the maximum traction you need. So what we do now is to actually put critical resources to play in all these areas. Take, for example, Agbara. What we now do in Agbara is we don't just open up the areas, we're actually investing in the infrastructure. As we speak, we're spending well over $15 million in opening up new roads across the entire Agbara region. And as we open up these roads, what we're doing is to partner with investors who then come in and put in their own businesses there. And we recognize that transportation, like you said, is a critical challenge. But you can't talk about transportation without talking about the road network in the first instance. And so the government has invested in infrastructure, and OPIC then has a mandate to go into those areas and create viable cities, if you call it that, and begin to put in the support infrastructure that people would then, that would attract people to stay there.
Okay, thank you very much. Coming back to the question of infrastructure, and I'd like to go back to you, Segun. Government-sponsored or government-led urban projects have not had a great reputation across the country when it comes to the provision of basic infrastructure. But now we're not even talking housing estates or industrial estates. We're talking about new cities. What are we going to do about water, about power, about rail, about the road networks, about bringing private partners, private resources, private capital, private talent to partner with government to make sure that the infrastructure and the vision that attracts long-term partners is there early and is there in a way that, as somebody said on the last panel, is truly world-class, which is only one standard, truly world-class?
Okay, well, there are three things. Number one is planning. Number two is planning. Number three is planning.
Okay.
I say this because it is essential, first of all, that we sit down and do our homework. before we announce to the world that we're doing something. And you can see that it's taken us like 2.5 years, almost 3 years, for us to be confident enough to get to this point that we're saying we're launching a new city, or this is what we're doing, because we now know that we know that we can do it. So what we've also tried to do is to get the best people, the best companies to help us out, because everybody's good at something, but we need to get somebody who's a square hole with a square peg in a square hole. So that's what we've tried to do. And when we say something is Ogun standard, it is international standard. So we've gotten people, for instance, planners, master planners, who are the best in the world. We went to Putrajaya, Malaysia. We got those master planners who did that project to help us to develop our project, because our economies are almost similar, so and our mindset as well. So we were able to get them to develop two of our major projects, which is the government city, which is on 6,000 hectares of land along the Shagamu-Abeokuta Expressway, and to do a major project in Abeokuta City, which is a urban renewal project, which is on 60 hectares of land. That particular piece of land is how can I say, is the opportunity meeting chance, because all the parcels of land in that 60 hectares of land currently belong to government. So it is a project which is coming at the right time, because in 5 years, perhaps those properties wouldn't belong to the government, and it'd be much harder to do. So right now, what we want to do is to stimulate the growth of Abeokuta City Center by upgrading the inner areas, lifting them up, having shopping centers, hotels, planning the place so that there's an influx of people. People begin to look at Abeokuta not as a sleepy town, but as a viable place to do business and to live. So that's for Abeokuta City Center. But in general, that is what we've tried to do, to employ people who we feel have the knowledge to help us out at a price to plan our cities. So once we've done that, the next stage is for us then to plan our strategy. And one of the things that we're trying to do is to see how we can make these projects attractive to investors, knowing fully well our limitations. We don't have the money to do these large projects, so we have to put them in a way that those who do have the money can come and invest. And when you want somebody to come and invest, you must tell them why they need to be there. You must tell them why. Like, for instance, our government city, we are planning an auto city there, an auto center. We're planning areas in which you can have your country home. It's a large piece of land on the Shagamu Expressway. Also, after this session, we're also launching our metro city. Our mission to rebuild city is on, like I said, it's a border city with Lagos. That also, because of the pressure points which exist along those areas, we feel the need to launch that city. So I guess the next question, let me preempt you, will be how come we are developing these many cities? You see, we're not looking at what we see now. We're looking at the future. We're looking 20 years, 30 years. How do we want Abeokuta, Ogun State to look like? What's our vision? And we feel, and the governor feels strongly, that if we fail to plan, those undeveloped areas will dictate to us how we spend our money. A very good example is Muweiba, for his unplanned, and we're trying to take control, but it's difficult because now people have built.
And it's become a nightmare for the rest of us.
Because people have built.
Yes.
So we need to take control of what we can take control of, and that is being proactive as a government, and that's what we can do. And because of this, we are, like, I'm glad Yvonne mentioned it, that the governor has surrounded himself with very intelligent people.
Able technocrats like yourselves.
Technocrats.
Okay.
Yes. So what we bring to the table is a lot of best practice policies not only in urban development or agriculture, but also in health, in education, even in finance.
A round of applause for the cabinet. Okay.
So that's what we do. It's a total package that we're doing in urban development. Thank you.
Yes, but I'd like to just go back to the case study that Nicholas was talking about as he was rounding up his presentation. I know that with Beirut, it was bombed out by war, and Abeokuta hasn't been bombed out, and it won't be by the grace of God. But would you just share with us, you said it was built in record time, and it was a partnership between the government and the private sector. So what can we learn from that to fast-track the development of urban clusters in Ogun State? Nicholas?
Thank you. After the war in Lebanon, Beirut for us is the capital, at the same time is the center of business. It's the also international hub for banking. So it was very important after the war to have Beirut rebuilt in a record time. What happened, the government discussed with the private sector, a company called Solidaire, and they asked them to build the whole city center from their own money, and in return they will allow the company to reclaim land from the sea to get it in return of all the investment that they will be doing. To do so, because they have owners for the lands and the city center, this company Solidaire created shares for the owners of the land. They will have shares type A, and also they raised funds from the public, or let's say from the people, through shares type B. And this is how they raised money that they invested in the replanning and also redevelopment of the whole city. And when they finished the whole infrastructure let's say implementation, they handed it over to the government in return of that land. When they did so, everybody benefited from this development because we created more jobs, so people came in to have their restaurants, their banks, their offices, companies, etc. within the city center, so a lot of jobs were created. At the same time, it improved, definitely it had impact on the nationwide, considering that, our country is a small country in size.
Thank you very much. Just one final question, and I'm going to leave this open for anyone to volunteer. And it's final question before we begin to take questions from the audience. One of the issues in urban development and in developing a sustainable strategy is, apart from looking after the environment and ensuring that what we're doing is sustainable and we're not developing today at the expense of tomorrow, there's also the whole issue of social equity, social justice, and making sure that development is inclusive and we are looking after the common man. How do we ensure that we don't end up building cities that are only for the middle class or the rich?
Well, what good things?
You're a private developer making money.
Well, I'm also part of government.
Okay.
Well, one of the good things that we've done in Ogun State is we have an inclusive team, like Shegun said, and there are actually 4 major players in the urban sector in Ogun State. You've got the Ministry of Housing, you've got the Housing Corporation, you've got OPIC, you've got the Bureau of Lands. Actually, there are 5. Then you've got the Ministry of Fiscal Planning itself. And one of the mandates that the Excellency the Governor gave to us is that we must cater for everybody. So every development we have are designed to be inclusive. Now, in order for those developments to be viable, you've got to be able to make money from them. That's where, like you said, an OPIC comes in. We've got to create projects that we can sell. However, you also have the Housing Corporation coming into that same area. You've got the Ministry of Housing in that same area, creating social housing, creating subsidized housing. For instance, the government is currently working on a workers' estate at Ladiri, where we're building over 1,000 houses for the public.
Let me interrupt you, Jide, and please permit me. That's fantastic, 1,000 houses in social housing, but how do we ensure that some of the lessons from history are not lost? There are some excellent examples that we have, especially in Western Nigeria. There's Bodija Estate that was developed by the Western region in the 50s and 60s, and it's a mixed income neighborhood. So you have, palatial homes for the practically royalty, as well as 1 bed, 1.5 bed, 2 bed homes, all in a mixed income neighborhood, which ensures that there's a bit of social harmony. I researched this a bit and understand that this is something that we've learned from the British. The British do this brilliantly, and internationally they're some of the best at ensuring that they develop neighborhoods in a way that they develop mixed income neighborhoods.
Yes.
So there's social housing along with luxury housing. And, all of your nice,
there's
fancy...
There's going to be a tour at the end of this program.
Yes. All of
and
your
one
nice...
of the places you're going to tour
Yes.
is actually a location where OPIC is building what we call the Orange Valley Estate,
Yes.
which for the middle income earner. And right across from us is Plainfields, which is for the lower to middle income earning stream.
Okay. So just tell us how Ogun State is doing it and how Ogun State has integrated this thinking into the development strategy.
Well, that's what I'm trying to explain to you, because for every development, we've already planned, like Shegun said, and we've understood what our market is, what the people can afford, and what we need to create to make that environment sustainable. So when we start any development, we actually have allocations in that location for the lower to middle income earning stream, the middle income earning stream, and then for the high end. So like she's explaining about Metro City. Metro City is not for what you could call the haves alone. We're going to have social housing there. We're going to have middle income housing there. We're going to have retail outlets for people like Judy to come and invest in there. And we're going to also have other opportunities for Renaissance to bring in the big players she spoke about into that same sector. But see, one thing that is very important is that, like someone said earlier on, money is not sentimental. Capital will chase where there's opportunity and where it can get returns. We recognize that government is not meant to be a business. But government cannot leave business to business alone if we want to take care of our people. So we look at every single opportunity and we ask ourselves, how do we cater for our people, cater for business, and make that place sustainable? Because as she said, we're not planning for today, we're not planning for 8 years, we're planning for the next 25, 30 years. And that's the model we're applying in Metro City, that's the model we're applying in Abeokuta, that's what we're doing in Agbara today.
I think, okay, that's great. But we're talking about a few thousand homes. I thought what we were here to talk about was accelerated industrial and economic development. And that really means talking about, if we think about the global housing or the Nigerian housing deficit, 17 million homes. Ogun State has probably at least 5 million homes. So we're still a long way from there. Ogun State needs to proactively engage with its partners, long-term partners. From a finance perspective, these are the development agencies and some of the national pension funds. I mentioned a couple. I'm happy to sit down with people and go through them. When they do this, then there's some bankable projects around housing, for example, that can be done, where people will bring in funds. These kind of investors have